Learning a foreign language is hard. We're required to remember thousands of new words, how to properly string them together, and how to pronounce them correctly in order to be understood. Altogether, these tasks can be quite daunting, and it will usually take you many years to reach a proficient level in a foreign tongue. Understanding how the brain works is, in my opinion, crucial to making the challenging task of language learning easier. Being aware of certain basic notions from the world of psychology can help you optimize your language learning techniques, prevent you from having the feelings of frustration that might come along the way, and help you reach your language learning goals in a shorter amount of time. In this video, I'm going to explain what I deem to be the most important concept we need to keep in mind when learning a foreign language, namely the forgetting curve. Then, related to that concept and related to my own experience learning 5 foreign tongues, I will present you 3 ideas that should be very present in our minds when learning vocabulary in a foreign language. Ready? Let's go! Hi, I'm Julian and I'm a polyglot who speaks 8 languages as well as a failed musician and a financial consultant. In this video, I want to lay out what is, in my opinion, the most important concept you need to understand when learning a new language, namely the forgetting curve. Firstly, I will explain what it is, and after that I will commentate the 3 most important ideas related to the topic of word acquisition that can be derived from this curve. It might be a rather long video, but I've tried to make it entertaining, so I hope you enjoy. Let's start by explaining a situation that has happened to me several times in order to explain the forgetting curve. Let's say I run up to a friend who asks me to summarize on the spot a book I've read a few months ago. Well, chances are that I'm going to struggle to answer that question properly. If I have not reviewed that book once in a while after reading it, I will only have a rough memory of the core idea it was trying to convey, would have forgotten some of the specific concepts I had learned from it, and would not even remember some of the essential parts of the book. What was the first law of human nature? I forgot. What were the 4 laws of behavior change? Yeah, I know that one. So it was make it easy, make it attractive, make it obvious, and the 4th one, I forgot. Where does the concept single piece flow come from? Yeah, I think I read that in the book, The Lean Startup, but I forgot it. Nonetheless, if I had been asked the same question just a few minutes after finishing one chapter of the book, I would have been able to recall with a lot of accuracy the details of the last thing I read. What was the first law of power? Yeah, I know that one. It's never outshine the master. You should avoid acting like Nicolas Fouquet, who outshined Louis XIV and ended up in prison. Sounds familiar? This is because whenever you learn something new, being a concept, a theory, or a saying, you will quickly forget most of it in the first hours and days after seeing it for the first time. The forgetting curve simply illustrates this phenomenon. It is a quantifiable description of the rate of forgetfulness over time. It tells you what percentage of the knowledge has been forgotten at a certain point in time after you first came across that new idea. Note that this is a big obstacle in language learning. When acquiring a new language, we need to learn tons of new words, sentences, verb conjugations. But if we're quickly forgetting every new word we come across, the question we should be asking ourselves is, how can we fight this phenomenon? How do we make words stick? One of the most effective methods to fight forgetfulness is spaced repetition. The spaced repetition curves tell you when you should review that particular concept you found so interesting in the book you just read, or for the matter, that particular word you're trying to learn in Polish, Swahili, or Parsi in order to make it stick in the long run. We owe both concepts of the forgetting curves and spaced repetition to the German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, who developed them in the late 1800s. Herr Ebbinghaus would create a list of nonsense syllables, would go through them, and then he would try to write down as many numbers and words he remembered. He did this over the course of a year, keeping notes of his progress and trying diverse learning methods. Since he was running the experiments on himself, we have to assume that Herr Ebbinghaus was not cheating. I mean, he looks kind of a trustworthy man, so let's give him a vote of confidence, shall we? And what he found out is that it took way many repetitions at the beginning and fewer later on in time to learn the random strings of letters he had put together. Now, let's move on to the 3 lessons I extract from the forgetting curve with regards to word acquisition. The first of them is probably the most self-evident one, namely that you should use spaced repetition to learn vocabulary. Learning new words should probably be your priority number 1 when trying to master a foreign tongue. The sheer amount of words that you know is very closely correlated to your level in that language, automatically improves the 4 language learning domains, and increases the likelihood of learning other words incidentally. Given the paramount importance of this task, we should ask ourselves, how should we go about it in an efficient way? Well, let's first recall what we have just said about the forgetting curve. Firstly, we know that we forget new pieces of information information very quickly. This is a big challenge we need to overcome in language learning because it makes the task of word acquisition more challenging. You need to repeat something several times with more intensity at the beginning in order for it to stick in the long run. That is, you should use spaced repetition. This is probably the best way to prevent forgetfulness from happening. Therefore, when learning a foreign language, I posit that you should all develop a system, a method, a web that, for one, stores the words that you're trying to learn in your target foreign language, and two, that encourages you to review that vocabulary over time using spaced repetition. By devoting some time every day to reviewing the words that you know and to increasing the amount of words in your web, you will steadily increase your vocabulary while also preventing the previously acquired words from being forgotten. How exactly that method for storing and reviewing words should look like is, in my opinion, a matter of personal preferences. I believe you should experiment and find what suits you best through trial and error. Some ideas, though, could be obviously using flashcards. You could either create some handmade ones or you could make some digital flashcards instead by using apps such as Anki. Or you could create lists of vocabulary, which is what I do. I will explain this in detail in my next video, but I preemptively tell you to find it up here in case you are watching this video at some point in the future. So let me emphasize the point again. Use spaced repetition when learning new words because it is the best method to fight a forgetting curve. If you don't do this, you might struggle to learn new words, which will lead to the feeling that you're kind of stuck in the process and consequently to a sensation of frustration. And frustration is exactly what my next point is all about. Understand the following. No matter how good you are at learning vocabulary, no matter how well you try to fight the forgetting curve by using spaced repetition, no matter how much exposure you have to a language, at some point, you will always forget words. You'll forget them when speaking because you're unable to recall a specific word. When listening to a conversation because you did not remember the meaning of a word you have already seen multiple times, or when they pop up in a text you're reading because you have forgotten their meanings. This is an intrinsic part of language learning. You are constantly forgetting. As Steve Kaufman usually says, the language learning process is a process of learning and forgetting. And continuously failing to recalling and recognizing words can be exasperating. It can make us feel stuck, can cause a sensation that we're not making progress with the language, or can make us think that the language that we're trying to learn is too difficult for us. So, are we gonna allow this frustration to get on our nerves? Are we gonna get mad at ourselves for forgetting a word? Or, on the contrary, are we just gonna accept this as an integral part of the process? To be honest, I belong to the first group, the one that got frustrated. This used to happen to me quite often, especially when learning Russian. From the 8 languages I speak, Russian is the one with which I've struggled the most when it comes to learning new words, because it's the first Slavic language I've learned. It is very unrelated to the other 7 languages I know as of now, which are either Germanic or Romance languages. That is, in the vast majority of the cases, I cannot associate that word I want to learn in Russian with that same word in any of the other 7 languages I speak. I cannot profit from the language synergies, to put it in terms of the world of mergers and acquisitions. For instance, words such as enseñar and enseigner in Italian and French were very easy to learn because they are very similar to the Spanish and Catalan versions of the word, namely to enseñar and enseñar. I would also find loads of commonalities between German and Swedish, for instance with words such as Wohlfahrt and Välfärd, or ehrlich and ärlig. And even between English and French with words such as dépôt. It would take me way fewer iterations to learn any of these words because of the similarities amongst the languages. But that was not the case in Russian. If I tried to learn the words загрузить, защищать, or большой, I would find it really difficult. As you can see, there are several similarities amongst the same words in the other languages I speak, but not with the Russian words. So I would often encounter situations such as I want to describe my Mac computer in my Russian lesson and I want to use the word совершенство, which means perfection, a word I learned a couple of weeks ago, but I fail to recall it. Or let's say I'm listening to a podcast in Russian and I hear the word преимущество, which means advantage. I immediately notice that I've already heard this word many times, but I'm unable to recall its meaning, even within the context. Or when I read the word сомнительный, then translate it and then realize that I've already seen it 3 times in the last month. Some time ago, I would get frustrated in all the situations I just described. Блин, я такой тупой, я никогда не смогу выучить русский язык. С меня хватит. I'm joking. But after time, I've come to accept these episodes as an intrinsic part of the language learning process. I accept this phenomenon the same way I accept the laws of gravity, or like I accept that even though communism has failed during more than 100 years in all sorts of latitudes, cultures, and in different historical moments, there will always be people who will claim that it failed because of how it was implemented, because according to them, real communism never existed. I accept word forgetfulness the same way I accept that some hardcore commies are gonna dislike this video. But I'm sure that you're different and that you're gonna give it a thumbs up, right? I would encourage you to accept that the forgetting curve will always be there and that you will thus constantly struggle to acquire new words. This will spare you a lot of exasperation along the way. And finally, another thing that you should accept when learning a foreign language is that there's a certain amount of drilling involved in the process. When I was a failed musician, I had to do snare drum technique every day. This consisted of a few rather monotonous exercises that I did not enjoy very much, but since I understood that they would help me to master the basics and thus allow me to make quick progress, for instance by being able to play faster, I would do them often anyway, even if I did not love it. I would do my session of snare drum technique every day, no matter what, and then move on to the more amusing parts of playing the pieces and making some music, insofar as that's possible as a percussionist. And I believe that the situation I just described is analogous to any skill you try to learn. Any ability will require you to repeat certain basic exercises over and over again, because they encompass the movements that are at the core of that same ability you are trying to master. These exercises might become boring though, because of their repetitive nature. But if you become good at them, if you perform them almost without effort, then you'll make quick progress in the development of that skill. And sticking to them partly hinges on your ability to overcome the dullness that might come along the way. This can be well illustrated in the world of sports. If you're learning to play tennis, you need to do a lot of serves. Even professionals train serves again and again, even though this might not be as amusing as playing a match against Nick Kyrgios. Or like football players make strength exercises for their legs and running a staple part of their training routines, even though they would have more fun playing a match and suing their counterparts. If you're a ballet ballerina, you'll have to do plié, santé, and tendu your whole life in order to be able to take part in monumental pieces such as the Libidinoe Ozera. I mean the Swan Lake, I just said it in Russian because I thought it sounded cooler. For me, learning vocabulary is the same as practicing scales in the world of music, playing serves in tennis, or practicing some tendu in the world of ballet. On the one hand, learning vocabulary is sort of the ability that is at the very basis of language learning and that will allow you to make quicker progress in any foreign language. But on the other hand, expanding and solidifying your vocabulary is, in my opinion, the least fun part of language learning, mainly due to its repetitive essence, because you have to see a word over and over again until you finally sort of acquire it. And also because learning new words is not the end goal of language learning. I mean, we do not learn a foreign language just to be able to recite the dictionary verbatim, right? What we want is to be able to communicate with others, for instance. Learning vocabulary will never be as fun as having a conversation with a native speaker or as reading a book in your target foreign language. In the same way, I had more fun playing Bach than hitting a piece of skin, or making another parallelism, Nadal prefers to play against Kyrgios rather than making serves. Well, I think Nadal doesn't like Kyrgios that much, so that example was probably not that accurate. In any case, learning new words is A, essential, but B, also potentially boring. Given that it's essential, you should focus on it, regardless of whether it's boring or not. Understand why it might be boring. In this case, it's because of how the memory curve works, namely because of the high amount of repetitions that are involved in the process of learning a new word. And also understand the huge impact that expanding your vocabulary will have on the level of your target language, and then just go through the drudgery no matter what. I mean, that's how I see it, but I guess you might have a different take on it, especially with regards to the last point, which might be a little bit controversial. If that's the case, just let me know of your thoughts on the comment section below. I will try to reply to most of them. I hope you liked the video. There are many more on the pipeline, so if you don't want to miss out on them, just hit on the bell button. Alright, see you next time.